And I came across this curious quote by an American football commentator in the 50s called Yoga Berry. For the linguistics around this, you're going to have fun with this one, because the quote is, "The future ain't what it used to be." And I think within that, it's sort of capturing this sort of sense of where we're sort of heading to, in the sense that we're used to an environment and to practices and things that we understand, and we're heading into a different sort of world, as we can see from the folding news, for example, around the Middle East at the moment, and other places around the world. So I think we are very much at the start of a revolution, a digital revolution, and I think that will create a lot of opportunities for some, hopefully all of us here, but also a lot of challenges as well. And I don't think that we should go into this lightly. We will meet many, many resistances as we try to change our practices along the way. I'd like to tell you a little story just to try and exemplify that. My grandmother was born about 100 years ago, and if we can imagine the sort of hospital that she was born into 100 years ago, and if you can also imagine the sorts of, a modern hospital, modern Delhi hospital, what that now looks like. So she was born 100 years ago, delivered by a doctor 100 years ago, and taught by a teacher 100 years ago. And if we now took a time machine and we transported both the doctor and the teacher into our present day, I expect the doctor just wouldn't know where to stand. They wouldn't know all this equipment around them, they wouldn't know the practices, they would be unable to see how to continue within that environment. Well, I suspect the teacher, well, they may not pick up a piece of chalk maybe, but actually they'd just be able to start immediately. Okay. So it's quite useful, I think, to look at sometimes, to compare different disciplines to see how far sometimes things have changed and how others haven't really changed. And I think things are changing for us, and I think that when you look around at the new buildings, for example, for universities and for schools, the sorts of environments that may support some of the mobile learning that Panther was talking about, those things will change. And with us, with all of us, we also need to change and think differently about the sorts of things that we're doing. Our learners, interesting, Jackie talked about the student voice, and our learners do understand the sort of world that they're going into. They understand the world that they're going into, they understand the uncertainty, in a sense, of the world that they're going into. And that's globally, across the world they understand that. I do quite a lot of work in Africa, and I've spoken to African students whose markets now are going online, the research is going online, a lot of the teaching is going online, and they understand that they've got to change and they've got to adapt. And for us it's new technology, and we call anything technology if it was invented in our lifetime. So we don't sort of see the pencil and paper necessarily as being technology, but it is technology. In the same way that my kids, they don't see computers as being technology or mobile phones as being technology. They just see it as being an aspect of ordinary life for them. And the same will be true for your learners. But we, of a particular generation, will see this as a new way of learning. These are new tools for us. We don't know how to use them. And I think there's also a sense of danger in that often online learning is seen as being, we call it 24/7. It's there all the time. You can access it at any time. It's very, very flexible. But the danger there is that if it's there all the time, often we don't really tend to it. We don't make a place for it in our lives. And one of the things that I've been doing over the last actually 10 years in running an online program remotely across the world is actually making sure that there's lots of different ways in which you can get face-to-face contact with some of those students and bring them in. So actually, because when you're learning online, it is quite a difficult thing to be doing. I think some of the other assumptions that we make about our learners is that they know it all. In one sense, they know how to, we think they know how to use the technology. And a lot of the research now coming out of the UK at least, is that they don't know how to use the technology. Well, they know how to use it for some things. They know how to use it to get onto their Facebook pages, or they know how to write on Twitter, but they don't know how to use it for learning. And I think that's something that we can really help them with. We know how to learn. You know, we teach people learning, and these are our children, our students who use the technologies sometimes very effectively, not always, but they use them for particular things. And I think that that's something that we need to think carefully about. Some of my colleagues here have talked about quality assurance, and one of the things in the UK which has been emerging, I guess, for probably about maybe the last 10 years or so, has been this notion of quality enhancement as well. And enhancement is a strange term to use, because it is about improving, but it's not improvement as such. It's about developing different ways and building upon new ways of doing things. So in one sense you could look at all our systems as needing to be developed, because they belong to an older world of education. And there are new things which are coming which will make big changes. The internet obviously is a major aspect in that, and I'm sure you're going to hear a lot more about that. But funny enough, what seems to be happening, certainly in the UK, which has got to a certain stage of its maturity, is the internet is now being used most effectively for dealing with local issues. So people are finding out about things that are going on locally using the internet. Okay, they can access things outside and the rest of the world, but actually it's an interesting thing which has now started to happen, and it's a curious thing for me. But I can understand exactly how that starts to happen, and that notion about community is extremely important, and your own local communities. The internet has developed. We call this the original internet, as we refer to as Web 1, with the onset of the sort of democratization of the internet, where everybody can be a publisher, we refer to as Web 2. And we're now moving into the semantic web, so sort of the web's understanding how to personalize the experience for us. An example may be, in my university, in the future, you come online, your mobile phone, which is GPS connected, will tell you exactly, it knows where you are. And when you come online, it will tell you that you're walking past the library, and you've got an assignment which is coming up in a couple of weeks' time, and maybe you'd like to read this particular book. And by the way, there's a couple of other of your colleagues in the same class as you who are also studying the library at that particular moment. So you can dream of the internet as doing different things, and dream of different systems doing different things, in terms of taking over some of the kind of cognitive load that we have. So, our brains need to think in different ways. We need to ourselves be transformed in thinking the futures. I've been running an international e-learning conference for the last 8 years. This is our 9th year, and this one, hopefully you'll get a little postcard in your pack tomorrow, is called Enhanced and Transformed. And we are thinking about not only the things that will be enhanced, but the way in which some of the systems, the way in which some of the processes can actually transform a learner's experience. And we think that this conference is very much about people telling their stories. And we think that that's a very, very important aspect for this conference, that we share, you share your stories with us, we share our stories with you, and in that way we move together forward. So I'd like to thank you very much. And,